Hello.
Hello.
Now here for the meeting?
Yeah.
Great. We have a sign-in sheet here. You go ahead and sign in, please. Thank you.
There. Your presentation. Yeah. Yeah. 20 minutes ago. Yeah. 30 minutes ago. Is when I got that. That's one.
Doing okay. How are you? Guys. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming this evening. I hope that we can have a very open discussion and pass on some great information to you about our project. And we're excited to get going. My name is Julie Crishone. I'm with JMC Owners Rep Services, and I'm the Owners Rep Project Manager working for both UCI and CASE. And just to let you know, everyone we have in the room with us is Alicia Blonsky, who's with the University Circle Incorporated. She's the VP of Community Development. We have Cameron Roberts, who's over there working on the computer there. He's the Associate Director of Transportation. And Sergeant Tim Kane is in the back. He's with UCI UCPD Police Department. And we also have a guest here, Diane Pride Mays, who is the assistant for Council President Griffin, who is also president. Thank you, present for here. And then we also have RL Hill as our construction manager. They've been engaged to do the demolition and all of management for the project. And we have Jen Blair here. She is the project manager. And we have Terracon Environmental, Kate Bainey. She is the department manager of asbestos and IH, which stands for industrial hygiene. And then I also don't want to forget my colleague Eric Gonzi, who is also working with me on the project, who is with my group, JMC. And just to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing so far with the process. We have addressed the environmental concerns and have been doing our due diligence with thorough testing and analysis. We've studied the structural impact of the removal to surrounding structures and roadways for the demolition of the project. And we have had the design review and planning approval obtained from the city of Cleveland, as well as we have our permit in place for the demolition of the project and are ready to get going. We have engaged our construction manager, RL Hill, and you've probably seen them on site as you've been walking by and seeing some activity. And just so everybody knows, for full disclosure, there has been a project partnership formed between UCI and CASE. So that's why I'm wearing hats of working with both organizations at this point. And what you see on the screen here is the end result of what we will have on the site when the project is complete. There will be an interim parking lot, which will be properly appointed with landscaping that will be very durable and provide color year-round. And you can see the black painted metal fence that will be going around the perimeter. Will also be, you see these yellow highlighted fixtures in the plan that are showing that we have a well-lit parking lot with full coverage. We will also have an emergency blue light phone, which will be located on the corner. And you see pictures in the bottom left of the bike rack and bench. Currently, there is a bike rack buried underneath all of the overgrowth there, and a bench that we will be replacing with new, so that will still exist at the bus stop there. And then in the far upper corner of the screen, you can see is the light fixture which has been selected to have the appropriate amount of light cutoff, so there's no bleed into any of the residents' windows over at the adjoining Commodore building. And but yet will give us full coverage for security of the parking lot. And this is a diagrammatic representation of basically the building coming down. We have the flat site. You can see the wall of the old Hillel building will be exposed. And that wall is currently shares a wall with the garage. So when that comes down, that wall has to be tuck pointed and treated with the proper coating so that it's, you know, watertight. And then the intent is to put, use some graphic banners and public art that's going to be managed by Case, similar to what you see on the Triangle building that you see to the left there. It would be probably a promotional banner and also artistic banner that will be managed by Case Western. Next slide here is the site logistics. And I'm going to call on Jen to come up and help me with the description of this slide. But what you see with the dashed blue lines is the pedestrian access around the site. The Commodore pedestrian corridor will be protected behind the building. We'll route around the front of the building on Ford. And then the crosswalk at Mayfield and Ford will be maintained. And then pedestrians will continue down the sidewalk up Ford on the opposite side, because of course in front of the parking garage, the sidewalk will obviously be closed throughout the duration of the project. And then there will be a temporary crosswalk that you see indicated just to the west of Hessler Road, which will be the point that pedestrians cross back to the south side of Ford and then continue down toward University Circle from there. And then what you're seeing around the Ford garage, I'm going to have Jen come up and talk about the vehicular control for construction. And I'm going to pass this to you.
All right, thank you. Okay, can everyone hear me? Thanks. Okay, so I just wanted to talk through some of the changes you may have seen this week for the site. What Julie, I think, was alluding to is some of the most difficult conditions of the site is just how tight the neighborhood is. So we know we have to keep access open for everyone, both vehicles, what I call the Mather Lane, and entrance and egress from the Commodore below the site as well. So those blue lines really represent the pedestrian area, and we will be keeping the vehicle access open as well back to Church of the Covenant and the other buildings back behind the garage. So I know that's been a concern. So really for us, the safest thing we can do is really establish that perimeter so that all of our activity is as contained as possible, and we are not kind of interacting with what is often kind of a heavy pedestrian and vehicle zone. So for the vehicles that are up above, we do have to go down to one lane. You'll see because we don't want people to be trying to cross intermittently in there. There is some traffic control to help people know when to go in and out. You will be able to pull off Ford and wait for that light to go through as well. And we do have some space as well just for access in and out of the Commodore, like we said, and the courtyard in the back as well. We don't anticipate having as much activity back there, but just to provide some safety zone in the back, we have that. I think the most useful thing we have is that panel fence just lets us move with the construction as it moves around the building, so we can accommodate kind of the activity at the time, or if we need to make accommodations for other things that are going on around us, we can adjust as needed. Sure. Okay. So just wanted to give everyone an idea of what they're going to see at the site. And this is the demolition, excuse me, the demolition sequence. And what you'll see is really number one, you see on the edges here. And this is the area that's going to come off first, this one on the far side here, that's the side toward Ford. And really what this lets us do is use some smaller equipment and to take off those edges of the building so that it lets us work more within that footprint of the fence and have less impact on the street and the alleys on either side. And so that's going to be our first activity for a few weeks, is just making some space in the site with that equipment. From there, you see the two up in the top corner, that's a stairwell in the back. And we're going to concentrate on that area next. One, it lets us finish the separation from the building behind it, the old Hillel building. And it gives us also some room to get some equipment in there to finish the work as well. So once we've done all that, we can move in some larger equipment. And from there, move to sections 3, 4, and 5. That larger equipment is really going to let things move a little faster once we've kind of done the more precision work on the edge.
So the idea is to work from the outside in. I have to be close to you. Is to work from the outside in so that you have the containment of the perimeter. There's, you know, you're not going to have pieces will be coming into the center as they're being dropped or demolished. So everything is being contained around within that perimeter fence, all activity. And you see here, these are some images that Jen provided for, you know.
Sure, sorry about that. Really, everyone has a different impression, I think, of demolition, and maybe it's, you know, early images of that wrecking ball that's coming in, or explosions. And that's really not what we have here. So we did just have a few images as well. This is really what we'll see during phase 1, this type of equipment. It's smaller, it's very focused on what it's taking out. It's really just taking small chips in very limited areas and letting the people even be a little further back from the work just for safety's sake. And then once we get past this phase, some of that larger equipment that we see on the next slide is kind of what I consider a little more traditional, though we can't quite see all of it here. So again, this is something as a case where it's almost like this equipment is taking bites out of the building. So it lets them move a little faster than what we saw before with the remote equipment. But it's not just big pieces of the building falling off. We're taking bites off and placing them where we need them to be. I know there was a question at our last community meeting as well about some of the dust control, and I'm sorry we've lost some of the photos here in the slide. What you will see a slight image of there in the bottom is water is really our first defense against dust, and we usually use a hose from a nearby hydrant to get kind of that full water flow. You'll see here sometimes the person is following the work as it goes. Sometimes we have remote stands that just keep the water pointed at the work. We have fogging machines. Really, we just adjust as kind of the work progresses around the building.
And the picture you would have seen in the black box, I don't know if any of you are skiers, but it's a water spray machine. It creates a mist or a fog that goes into the area of construction and grabs the particles that might become airborne and basically pulls them down. It's a different way of using water to mitigate dust, but instead of directing a spray, it's more like a fog. So you may see some of those machines, and I apologize about the little technical error there, but so just speaking about the progress to date, Jenny, if you want to tell them a little bit more about, you've all seen the perimeter fence installed and the water barriers, those orange plastic, barriers that you've seen at the base of the fence are actually filled with water. And Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about how those add extra protection just to
Sure. And in terms of, we know it's a tight area. We know there's a lot of traffic. So those barriers really let us keep the fence close to the project. It's also close to traffic, we recognize. So those barriers are certainly heavier and they're more stable for everyone. So we're just not having any inadvertent bumps that are pushing things out into traffic at that point. You will see we have the panel fences on either side. Those will bump out once we have more equipment on site to take it down to that one lane that we had on the logistics plan. And again, that really just helps us be a little bit more mobile, depending on which side of the building we're working on, those can move with it.
And then we are in the process of removing hazardous materials per EPA regulations, all the materials before any demolition can be started. Things like the fluorescent tubes from the light fixtures, the hydraulic fluid from the elevator. There was a fuel tank for an old generator that was in the building that's all been emptied. And then any additional hazardous materials will be removed before any of the construction demolition starts. And we currently have, for protective measures, vibration monitors in place at the Commodore, the Hillel building, and the Mather building next door, so that we're, being careful to monitor how any of the construction impact, if there's any kind of vibration that is, prevalent or heavily felt. There's also salvaged equipment, light fixtures, light poles, and other things that have been removed from the building at this point and are being repurposed and recycled. Upcoming, Jen, you want to talk about what we've got going on in the summer and into the fall? This
Sure.
is just to let you know, this is a very broad brush schedule. You'll be seeing more detail posted on the website, UCI's website, and we'll be showing what we call a 2-week look ahead, which is really the more immediate progress of what's happening. But this is kind of a high level overview. of what you
Sure.
can see.
So we've been mobilizing this last week, kind of getting prepped. We kind of call it soft demo. And that's going to continue for a few days. We're waiting for our equipment delivery. So in the next week, maybe week and a half, we'll see that equipment come in. We'll probably start in the basement. You'll start hearing some of the noise down there as we get the basement ready. We'll also be having some stone deliveries, so there'll be some traffic moving in and out for that. We're really just prepping the basement and keeping the building stable during demolition. And from there, we'll move into the sequence 1 that we saw on the demo plan, and on from there. I expect sequence 1 to last about 3 weeks. I'll admit it's probably going to be one of the noisier phases of the work. And from there, it should get less and less impactful from there. We hope to have the building down by mid-June, end of June, mid-July, end of July. And that lets us keep filling in the lower level of the structure through August. So after that, I think we kind of forget about the other things that are happening. That's some of the underground piping that we need to put in. We need to do a little bit of concrete work just to bring everything back up to grade. And then electrical work, the paving, etc., just to bring the surface lot in from there.
Yeah, and at this point in time, our projection is to have the parking lot complete in October. And so we have put this QR code just so everybody has access to the web page, and also have the web address at the bottom. And I'd like to open up to any questions.
People who live over at the Commodore place, those people can't really park anywhere at the moment. They have their friends visit them. When you finish that thing, they're gonna become a parking lot for anybody to park in.
The parking will be managed by Case, so it'll be like using like the Severance Garage or any of, you could purchase a pass from Case and use it. So that is the option, and unfortunately, that's still evolving. At this point in time, I'm sorry, Bill, the question is, are we building something in place of the parking lot over time? Okay, and eventually that parcel will maybe developed, you know, down the road. We don't know. There's no finite plan for it at this point in time. Thank you. Yes.
As Jen know, at the community meeting, BCI community meeting, the Hessler Neighborhood Association and Hessler Housing Co-op requested that the demolition not take place during the summer. When we have to have work windows open in order to cool our homes. We don't have central air. And obviously that has been done. We were informed that it was denied, but it has obviously been discussed on this time frame to see. We've also made several requests for the environmental studies that we've done in conjunction with this, because our greatest fears are really not asbestos, which is easily identified as hydrocarbons, PCBs were widely used in construction for everything from grouch to caulking to paints and sealants. So there's reason to believe that there are probably substantial PCBs.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are hydrocarbons, that's considered a hydrocarbons that was used as a parking drug. So the likelihood of spills and other contamination just from cars parking in that building for 50 years is probably very substantial. We're very concerned about exposure to concrete dust that contains these contaminants. And so I would request that the person who's in charge of environmental address some of these concerns for us. We'd like to know how often there will be air quality monitoring done, how often the dust will be monitored for content, and how that will be the results of that will be made to us. And so we're really focused right now. There are many other questions where your workers are going to park, you know, destruction damage done to Ford Road, potentially I can make it when we started last year with the garage, a tiny little garage in the back of 1975 Ford. But right now our main priority is
the contaminants. Yes.
What are you doing to get the health and safety?
Well, I'm going to invite Kate Bainey up because she is our representative with Terracon. So we hired Terracon as our third-party testing agency. And so we have tested for all the materials that you've, I should get that to you. Yeah. And so I'll let Kate address some of the concerns.
Okay. My name's Kate and you are?
Yeah.
Jazz?
Yeah.
Janice. Nice to meet you, Janice. I heard several questions, but the two main ones that you asked were, when will the monitoring take place? The monitoring will take place before and during the demolition, active demolition. So daily, every day. Yep. I would imagine as the results come in, they'll be made available. So I think that there's an effort for full transparency when the results come in.
Requested copy of phase 1.
Well,
We have had no feedback.
so the phase 1, we've actually continued into doing the phase 2, which is the environmental work that's required that phase 1 necessitates. We are doing that now and have done that. We are completing a phase 1, so there will be a phase 1 available for your review. And we have the phase 2, the environmental reports. We have, we're getting them finalized at this point in time, and we will make that available to the residents because I know that was a big issue in the last meeting. So I want to make sure that, we're being very transparent. As far as some of the oils and fuels that you had mentioned, requesting, how cars are parked in there, there is a oil interceptor, the reservoir at the bottom of the garage that collects all of the runoff. It's, and it has over time collected oils and, just street, debris and things that come off of cars. It's a
Set
separator.
off by elevations.
Yeah.
So the water flows, the heavier materials stay, and then that gets periodically cleaned out.
Yeah.
That's how that,
But that would not, that would have to be.
correct.
I can talk to you about we did a visual assessment for PCBs, bulbs, ballast, batteries. All of those items will be taken out. And you specifically asked about caulks and yeah, we call it glazing, but essentially it's the same thing. So any place where you need elasticity, obviously, it sounds like you know a lot about PCBs. So there were every caulk and glazing was sampled, and what needs to come out prior to demolition will come out, and that'll be verified before demolition begins. So that all has been sampled, analyzed, and we have a game plan together to address that. So PCBs, what else? Okay, the oil water separator will take care of that.
Still stuff in concrete.
Yeah, I mean, it's concrete, right? Yeah, it's not a naturally occurring material, so to speak. So that's where the active dust suppression comes in during the demolition. So that's where the water, it's the same thing when there's no asbestos in this building, but when we do asbestos abatement, we use water because water knocks it down. So it's the same thing. You'll either see the mister or you'll see a hose. Actively, when dust is generated, the demolition crew will do that. If in the event that it's an area that's close to a corner, or if the wind shifts, they're aware of that. They can cease activities, wait for the wind to shift, work to another area, so that all of the anything that's generated stays within the building, the property boundary of the fence line.
Yeah, what happens to the water?
It's on the ground and they're essentially they're either loading out the concrete or it's knocked down.
Generated by low. And remember, Hester is downwind from the site. We are directly downwind.
Yeah,
So anything likely to end up in our window. We have our window.
You had mentioned why we aren't doing this in November. And we can see very much so that that we are in the summer months right now where the traffic on Ford is much less. You have much less pedestrian traffic. It's just overall safer for us to be doing this now from a standpoint of the proximity of vehicles and pedestrians walking around the site. And
But it's less to the tree, it's less safe from the point of view of residents living in the life.
one of the
Not have central air conditioning and who have windows.
I think it's very important to note that we are following the best practices for mitigating the dust. And we're going to do everything we can to keep that down and make sure that it doesn't migrate past the fence line. I mean, that's why the water is used, and that's why those practices are put to use in anytime there's commercial demolition. And there are, Kate can speak to the EPA regulations that we have to follow. I mean, we're doing everything within the law and then some to make sure that we're, keeping the environment safe and the, residents around the facility, around the site safe, and, creating a safe environment for pedestrians and vehicles. We're doing everything that we can to make this as safe as possible.
That air quality sampling of the dust. Station set up on Hester to actually monitor the air quality on Hester. Not on the site, but on Hester.
Well, I mean, the point is that we're keeping the dust down. So, that is something that we'll take into consideration. In fact, we are currently in the process of getting a dust monitoring proposal from Terracon. So typically those monitors are placed right outside the fence line because they want to see how dust is moving past the site. If we put dust monitors on your street, somebody blowing leaves who's cleaning their, yard could be blowing up dust that has nothing to do with our construction. So it's very difficult if we move away from the site. That dust can be produced from a, bus going down the street. I mean, we can't, it's hard to police all the dust that's flowing through the neighborhood because we're not responsible for all of it. But we will do what we can to make our site safe and place, monitors right outside. That's what they typically do because there are other sources of dust in the environment that have nothing to do with this project. Well, the dust won't carry PCB and hydrocarbons because we're going to mitigate that at the site. That's what we have to do by law. So, we're not, but as far as putting monitors on Hessler, what's that picking up? It's picking up, you could be picking up what's happening across the street with the construction project right across the street from you. So it may not be our dust.
So the word mitigate is not going to eliminate. And when you talk about what you use in the law, that means there are acceptable parts per million of states in the end. Those parts per million legally aren't necessarily something that the rest of us are really happy about. I work in this building. I'm concerned because I don't have a lot of respiratory problems. So regardless of what you say you do to mitigate, I know that I will be affected by this.
What we are doing is we have to take the building down. We are going to do everything. I'm sorry.
This is the least sustainable in terms of sustainability. The case is supposed to be this really big champion of sustainability. A flat asphalt parking lot is the worst thing for sustainability.
This is,
All the
yeah,
runoff, all the heat sink. Yeah,
okay,
as an alum and an employee.
thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm here from the Church of the Covenant, and I'm curious about the one lane, not the mitigation.
Sure.
The one lane public vehicle access. We are doing so work is going to require very heavy handlings. But it's something and they will need to get through that one vehicle.
Well, that's something that I would,
Yeah.
late July. Well, that would be something that we could work with Jen and her team to make sure that we coordinate with the schedule of your contractor. Because, I think that we could work together on that, make sure that you can get access.
Would it be possible for that fence to be moved at the time if it is needed, or that I don't know what the mechanism for the manager or like or what. So let's just make sure you have my information when you go and we can do that.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Hi. Sorry if this has already been answered. I'm on virtual. I don't know if anybody can actually hear me, but it's kind of hard to hear people asking and answering. I can hear you guys, the speakers, but when people ask questions, it's hard to hear virtually. So sorry if this has been asked, but I live in Commodore Place and I'm wondering if we will be able to park there once the parking lot's finished, because there's worse things in the world, but it's really been annoying having to park all the way over. And I think what's the 72 lot?
Yeah.
And I know it is for a lot of other people because there's a lot of people with disabilities in this building and,
Yeah.
yeah, it's difficult. And the price went up when we had to go park over there, like by 20, $30, something like that. So I was
Uh,
wondering if we knew anything about that and if you had any ideas about cost, but that's pretty far out.
Yeah, all I can say is that we will post information on how to get that information from Case. It will be a Case parking lot.
Okay.
So, and, I imagine that like the other lots nearby, that it will be, accessible to residents as well. And I just don't know the details at this point, but as soon as we know them, I'll make sure to get that information posted on UCI's site.
Okay. And when you say flat lot, that means just like a normal parking lot, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Dust monitoring that you're going to do, will be daily reports that residents on Essex get.
I believe the dust monitoring, doesn't it report, picks up reads on a daily basis, but compiles them
There's a
weekly?
couple options for what the actual program will be,
Mhm.
but if not daily, it should be at least every third day.
Third day?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing is that parking lot you're building that I think is temporary.
It's an interim parking lot. For all intents and purposes, it's gonna have a gate, it's gonna have lighting, it's gonna have fencing, it's gonna have landscape. I can't tell you how long it'll be there, but, it's gonna be a fully developed parking lot. And
So it sounds like it might be.
Sustainability.
we don't have, no, actually, we're doing the whole project. So RL Hill's doing the whole project, and it was originally, because it is, we didn't originally go for putting in pavers because, primarily because it's a cost issue. There's a lot of, cost to putting in the under drainage and everything required for that. And since it is a lot that will be, it's an interim parking lot, it's not a permanent parking lot, so it won't be there. I don't know how long it's going to be there, but it may be 5 years, and I have no idea. Yes.
How many space in the parking lot?
There'll be 75 spaces, and we don't have any commitment for those spaces at this point in time. I honestly don't have an answer for you on the parking details. I can't speak to that. That's part of Case's parking management. And, but we will have more information on that as we get further down the road. Yes.
Will there be pedestrian access across behind the garage when there's the one-way road?
Parking access maintained,
Pedestrian access.
pedestrian access, yeah.
Walk down.
Um,
Is there any sort of sidewalk that's down and blocked off?
Yeah, during the course of the construction, we're gonna not encourage pedestrians. Well, actually, once we get to the fall, it depends on the time frame. Once we get to August, I don't know, if you'll be able to walk down Mather Way, that direction.
Yeah, I'm sorry, not sure everyone can hear me. In terms of pedestrian access down that Mather Lane, I would definitely say we discourage it just because of the equipment in the area. And if there are vehicles going by, there's just less room for pedestrians. The road isn't going to be blocked, but the preference is to try and use the courtyard kind of more as a way to cut through.
But by the time you get to August, like August, September, we'll probably be getting to the point where you're still gonna have the perimeter. You're not gonna have the sidewalk available, but they may be able to access through the alley.
We'll be moving that fence, kind of to match the equipment we have. We'll probably, be doing hardscape at that point and restoring.
True.
Sidewalks on either side. around it.
Yes.
Question about runoff. During the project, there will be a copious amount of water and dust being hopefully trapped by that water. We'll have an increase in the amount of water being directed to our storm drains. Is there a way that we're planning to mitigate the amount of turbidity and
Yeah.
solids that are going into our storm drains?
We are required also by law to maintain the runoff and to use silt socks and other management to maintain, to manage that, runoff is controlled going into the sewers. And again, the debris, the waste, that's going to be contained on site. So it's, of course, water is going to flow, but they'll also be using, I don't know if Shark, you have the other SWIP plans that the site engineer has planned for during construction, during demolition. If you have anything more to say about that, but it is required to manage that on site. Yeah.
So the sock goes underneath the drainage system and it hangs down under the bridge, is that how that works?
Anything that goes, any water that's falling in the storm system, be filtered through.
The silt socks are upstream of the drains, so it catches the silt before, it doesn't go into the drain. The silt socks are before the drain.
There are a few different ways to address it depending on, I guess, where your drain is.
Yeah,
The
but the intent
is
is
to
to
have a
keep it
filter.
out of the drain, to keep it filtered away from the.
So essentially, any place there's a natural collection basin or installed storm drain, it gets filtered. So sometimes you'll hear them referred to as dandy bags. It's a filtering media that the water passes through prior to entering the storm drain, and then those periodically get changed. So if you ever drive by a construction or demolition site, you see those black or orange long tubes. Yeah, they're usually from sometimes they get, sometimes that happens, but that's part of there has to be, as part of the demolition, they have to prepare, you heard the word SWIP, Storm Water Pollution Prevention Plan. So that has to go to soil and water conservation to get approved along with the other applications that they're required to put in prior to demolition. So all that has to be approved and given the go ahead on.
Yes,
Go by the work site and see that the mitigation measures are not in place when people are working, if there are a number of questions.
there will be a contact. What do you call that? On the website, there will be a place to put comments and to make any, to contact us. And we will also have a emergency contact number for if there is an emergency issue that's happening on site. There will always be a presence on site from RL Hill.
So you will certainly see us out there. You're certainly welcome to. We're happy to answer questions anytime.
What about the noise levels? What is acceptable, what's not acceptable? I'm guessing nobody ever told you that we actually have classes here in the summertime, particularly in this building, so will people be able to hear what we're teaching while you're doing demolition in June, July?
So that first sequence 1 that we went around, that I would suspect is going to be our noisiest phase. And I do know you have classes. I think we will certainly try to address whatever we can. I know we make a plan and then sometimes we have to adjust to the circumstances as they come up. So again, to kind of go back to the last question, the more feedback we can get, the more things we can try and address, from someone's perspective that isn't where we're standing.
Yes,
Got a couple of follow-up questions from the Church of the Covenant.
Sure.
Since we have to get back to the back. So this garbage truck. So following up on the gentleman's question about pedestrian access. Could you clarify what you were saying about that access from the alleyway or whatever the call it, from Fort?
Sure, so.
Is it going to be blocked off completely at times, or is the access going to be maintained?
So the road between the garage and
Yeah.
Mather that leads back to the Covenant. So that's gonna be maintained. We need
Is
to
that a
keep that
point?
open. It is an emergency
Okay.
access
Here
area.
you go.
Okay.
So.
You want to point at this, or I don't know if I'm pointing the right spot for that.
I'll point it.
No, this, it's along the side there. There you go. Yeah. It's that access.
So there are going to be a few times when we will need to close it. We'll have advance notice to everyone for when that happens. It might schedule it on a weekend to try and lessen the impact of people going in and out.
You think?
That's
we're-
what we have, sure, but I understand. So we'll definitely be.
Right,
having
this is what
some
she's
parking
talking
For that. And then we do that work in coordination with the fire department because I just. that's
Yeah.
the access.
Yeah, got it. Thank you. All right. All right. Yes,
Encourage this, not to use that down. One issue we face is we have a community meal and residents from Commodore attend, a couple of them are in wheelchairs. And our church is miserable in that accessibility. People enter through the back and they use that drive, get from Commodore up to the back. They enter next to our dumpster through our kitchen floor. But in any case, it is what we have.
yeah.
So, in those circumstances, while they're encouraged not to, they're still allowed to, if they don't.
Sure, so I suspect I should come down and visit with you guys and take a look at it and just make sure we understand what's happening. And what we can do to make it work for everyone. Right, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. They can't hear you. Sorry. So anyway. Yeah, so the summary is just that Jen will be getting together with the Church of the Covenant to be able to address the issues of access. The other concern that I have is that if they have to get around, we'll just have to talk to you about that. There's got to be, because I'll end up going across the street around and then down. It's a little longer route. I don't know, we'd have to walk it with you to see what would be an accessible route that may be able to be used just in the interim. So about that.
Thank you.
In the back, yes?
Who determined that the garage, that it's used for light and bathroom?
There was a facility assessment report that was conducted 2 years ago. If not longer, maybe a little bit longer. And the amount of money that would have to go in, to bring the garage up to code. And there were a lot of structural issues that were going on with the garage at that point in time. There were repairs that were fairly costly. So it was just determined that they wanted, sorry,
Excuse me, perhaps I wasn't clear.
okay.
I want to know who determined the garage had reached the standard choose for light, and is that report available to us on?
All I can tell you is there is an assessment that was performed. And we do have that information. If you would like to see that, it's up to, I don't think that, I'd have to check with UCI to see, but there was an assessment that was performed. I can't answer your question directly.
What's the question?
What's the name of the company?
I can't, off the top of my head, I don't
I
recall.
don't know.
And what
Yeah.
I'm asking is that report available for us?
I'd have to check with UCI on that.
It's it was Walker Consultants. Walker. And is the report available?
It is not on the moment, so you're not gonna get that. I am,
No, it's good.
yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. But again, it was a comprehensive report of the facility structure and needs and, was, was very clear. I'm not gonna ask for it, I need one, because I'm happy, I tried to go to you about it. It's, I mean, it was a comprehensive examination of the structural garage needs and based on conditions and the garage needs and found that it did not make sense to invest in the garage in order to continue to operate it rather to have the future equity short. He's not interested in this farm notes, he wants to see the things.
We'll have to look into that for you. All right. Any other questions? Yes.
What coordination is going to take place between this project and the construction project from Tesla? I don't see any team here tonight.
They were invited, they weren't available. We have had a meeting with them. We talked about some of the activities that they had that were ongoing. I know that they need access to Ford for some tie-ins that they have to do in the next week. And so, they talked to us about traffic and, what things that what issues that they were going to have in the next month or so. But we were planning to have ongoing conversations with them as well.
It was problematic because when they closed, when they have a third of all the parking on the Hester Road, or Hester Road parking district, people have 1 day. And those are the kinds of things that we're worried about. Where are all of your construction workers going to park their cars?
Well, they've been given options that aren't necessarily close by. Well, Case has offered a parking lot over by the North Village that I think, oh, I'm sorry. The question is, where will the construction parking take place? You don't want them parking on Hessler, and I understand they can't. They have been told by Case that they have parking available over by North Village. And that's what your understanding is too, right? Ken?
Yeah, right. That's an option for work on Case. Otherwise, we were asked to look for monthly passes and lots in the nearby vicinity.
I know the general construction workers, want to have your getting close to where they are. Those for oversight, and also for access. But I don't know whether that is any of those same concerns with the demolition.
So I'd say it's similar to what you've seen on other construction sites. There's definitely larger trucks that have equipment for the day on them. We're certainly trying to stay contained to our area. I wouldn't anticipate anyone being on Hessler.
I mean,
It's just no.
I agree. There's,
And I agree. You thought that you would only be closing that road 1 lane at a time. Is that correct? Because otherwise, Hessler has to become a 2-way street. And that's, if you close the access from Ford, the only alternative is then Hessler has to become a 2-way street for us to have access to our homes.
Yeah.
And that has a whole range of problems and safety problems and.
it's just not safe to have equipment vehicles, trucks going down Hessler. I mean, we're definitely not looking at that as an option.
true.
No, but I'm just saying, if you have to close Ford completely,
Oh, we won't, we're not, we
No.
won't.
you won't.
In fact, that's part of the reason why we went with RL Hill is because, you know, you guys had a plan that minimized the closures.
Okay.
If we do have a one lane closure, we're gonna make sure that it's happening at times that are least disruptive, but Ford-
Agreed. So that fence that went up in the past few days on Ford, that's where we want it to stay the majority of the time, right there on the curb line. And then we do need to do a tie-in to some existing lines in the street. Obviously, we have to do traffic control when we have to dig in that area, but that's not intended for any extended duration in the project.
Helpful to know these things because
Yeah.
these seem to happen. We don't know to the last minute, and then we can make any provisions. for how to
Sure.
plan.
So part of the plan, working with UCI in case is to use the website just to say, can we produce a week or 2 week or just a look ahead in general of things that might be happening. So you can have some notice just to say, you know, this week, this is the activity you see, but next week it might look different, or you might see more trucks this week. Or, you know, you might be hearing something different the following week, to try and keep those updates going. And then, as I think Cameron mentioned, having the ability to provide some feedback on that website as well, in case there's just something we're not aware of on our side, so that it's something we can go and look at and hopefully get you a response to.
Great, you finished the parking lot there, and would that be open to anybody to park in there? Say, for example, residents.
yeah, so the question again about the parking and availability, we will have those details at a later point in time. I-
Only be parked there for your back, like, streets. Only park there 15 minutes for the-
as we continue through the project and as I have more information from cases, Department of Parking and that I'll be able to post that and provide that information in further updates. But at this point in time, I just don't have information on how they're gonna manage the parking, but it will be a case managed parking lot. You had a question in the back?
Yeah, thanks for the. I just wanted to, clarify, will the information that's been requested so far, so that I have got, I was gonna ask about a recording of this meeting we're having right now, if I could get it right now.
Mhm.
Updated construction schedules, air quality monitoring results, and reports available during construction decisions. We assume all of those will be posted over the course of the summer to the website.
Yes, that's our intent. That's why we've set it up that way. And then if there's any comments or questions, you'll have a opportunity to post those on the site and we'll get back to you. Yes. We'll post that information as well. Well, that's okay. I understand.
Why is demolition gonna take so long? I have heard some of it has to do with the way in which the building was constructed. And that in fact, it makes the demolition, not just the common wall around, but just the way in which the pieces of the building were put together makes it more difficult to demolish. And it would it be almost, because it would help me be less difficult, maybe, to say that you are gonna have to deconstruct that thing, with that and demolish. You are really gonna have.
Well, that is in fact what they're doing, because if you see the images of what they're doing, they're taking it down in bits. They're not, you know, pushing it in and hitting it with a wrecking ball or imploding it. They're very carefully, almost surgically cutting it apart, jackhammering out areas and taking it out bit by bit. And it's the responsible way to do it and the safest way to do it. And I don't know what else to, how to elaborate on that. If Jen, you have any, the other thing that we're gonna be doing is if there is any further abatement of concrete or whatever, all of that will be carefully managed and, you know, taken apart and disposed of carefully. So it's a process. And so we have to be, it does take some time. I think the most, but when you look at the most heavy demolition, it's really going to be down in about 8 weeks, isn't it? More or less. Go ahead.
Sure, yeah, I would agree that the mass demolition of the building actually is not a very long time. It is coming out in pieces just because we are so tight to everything there. So it has to be very controlled, all the pieces that come off. But then there is a basement, so we need to bring it back up to grade. And that takes some time. And then we have to redo some of the underground utilities. So it's more than demolition.
So when will the major be taking place? When will they begin? It's not, some of us are thinking they can. We don't want to, but we may have to sustain. And so, could you tell us how long we have before get to that point and how long have they last?
So you, depending on when equipment deliveries can come in, I would expect equipment to be in the basement as soon as next week. And there's some work to do to prep in that area. And then by the end of that week or into the next week, we would hope to be doing those edges. Forgive my head.
End of May.
Mhm.
So
So I would say by the beginning of June, we would expect to have that equipment on site for those perimeter demolition.
I think we have 3 weeks in for that.
Yep.
So it's like through the month of June. And then in
Correct.
July is the inner core
Mhm.
demo.
And it will depend on the size of equipment we are able to bring on site that can make us go a little bit faster or a little bit slower. But I'm happy to provide more updates as those things happen each week to say what activity is happening.
We have a question in the chat from Mark Hargate. He asked, the testing of the concrete glazing in fact show the presence of PCBs.
And what's the question? Is there a
He
piece?
was hoping to, he said it wasn't clear. He wanted to know whether the testing of the glazing has presence of PCBs.
Yes. So we have had some PCBs that are present in the glazing, in the caulking at the base of the columns. And so we are, you know, looking into,
There's a process to remove it prior to demolition. Yep. So that takes place and then we confirm that it's out, and then once that's done, then the structural demolition of that section will begin. So,
Yeah.
Yep, it all gets taken out prior to demolition.
it's part of the abatement. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So part of the abatement process is to remove all of the caulk before any of the concrete is demolished. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much. I will continue to keep you updated, and if I'm going to, for those who might not have gotten this or just want to keep this slide, please get the QR code and keep in touch. Sorry about that. Moving forward. Thank you very much.